There we go. Welcome, welcome to the Vulcan Soapbox. This is the pod where intellectuals get together to have intellectual discourse on a variety of different topics. We're gonna sprinkle a little bit of fun in there, some rapport, some repartee, but we're gonna get into some issues that we think are affecting the world and our community in particular. We welcome comments. Sometimes you may be able to get on as a guest if you have a valid point or valid contribution to the conversation. But
Especially
just
if you
three.
disagree.
James always wants to smoke, man. But gentleman
Vulcan,
to my left, introduce yourself.
the name.
How's everybody doing? I'm the Vulcan. As he said, we welcome people to come on, especially if you disagree. This is a platform people that have different opinions or the same opinion can share them in a safe space. Safe in the sense of we don't resort to ad hominems. We focus on the issues. We're not going to try to straw man whatever your point is. We're going to just focus on whether it makes sense or whether it's not. We don't always have to agree. There's a French moralist that said it's better to debate an issue without settling it than to settle an issue without debating it. And so for me, also a proverb, I'll give a proverb too. It says the man who presents his case first seems right until another comes and cross-examines him. So that's the spirit of this show, and that's what we want to do today when we're going over Dr. Umar. I'm a big fan of Dr. Umar's in a lot of ways, but no, nobody's above criticism. Peer review, the scientific method, precept upon precept. Nobody is always right, and nobody's always wrong. So we're going to discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly, and have a good time doing it. Welcome to the show.
Yes, it's your boy
Gentleman
D.
to go ahead.
Yeah, D. Enos is the name. Darius, first name, last name, Enos. Um, Glad to be here. Like you heard what the brother said. This just shows for the thinkers. Remember, we like to explore in the critical thinking area. Always remember that critical thinking is the art. It is a skill of analyzing. So that's what I'm here for. All right. That's all I got to say.
All right, so these are our panelists for the evening for this pod. Darius, if you will, please play the video,
Yes, sir.
and away we go.
So this is Dr. Umar, one of his latest interviews. He's on, I think the name of the platform, DJ, if I'm not mistaken, DJ UTV. All right, let's
Yeah.
get into it.
DJ, you go crazy. DJ UTV, let them know who we got in the building.
Dr. Umar Ifatunde, the Prince of Pan-Africanism. Glad to be here.
Dr. Umar, what you on, gang?
I'm well. Glad to be back in Chicago. There's a migrant crisis town hall meeting tonight. So I'm going to go there and speak a little bit, hear from the people what's really going on because the country want to know. Me personally, I believe the migrant situation in Chicago and New York is being led by the federal government. They're spearheading this to basically erase Black people politically. Chicago has the only predominantly Black U.S. congressional district in the entire country. That's why Obama had a lane. Carol Moseley Braun had a lane. Most of your modern Black senators, we've only had a handful that came from Chicago because y'all have the only predominantly Black U.S. congressional district. So they want to switch that out for Latinos. That's why they're here, to replace us politically. I suspect that at some future point in time, if they're not already doing it, they're going to fast track the migrants in Chicago and New York to full citizenship so they can vote. And I wouldn't be surprised if they'll be eligible to vote in time for next November's presidential election. This is a purge of Black by brown, and this is a takeover because Chicago and New York are our two strongest and largest Black communities and Black consciousness communities. So they want to blot that out. The strategy is if we can take New York and take Chicago, the rest of Black America doesn't stand a chance.
Well, we definitely having a terrible migrant crisis here in Chicago. But first of all, welcome to DJ UTV.
Glad to be here. DJ UTV.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
It's definitely a blessing to have you. On our channel, we cover a lot of Chicago drill related content.
Okay.
we like to throw a mix of intelligent conversations in there, you know, from time to time, especially toward the end of the year.
Yes, sir.
Last year, we attempted to have an intelligent conversation with Charleston White, and he pulled a gun out on us. So this year, we want to do something different with yourself. So can you start by telling us where you're from, Dr. Umar?
North Philadelphia, born and raised. Across the street from, down the street from Bill Cosby. Across the street from Meek Mill. He and I were not friends. He was friends with my younger brother. I'm obviously a half generation older than those guys, but that's my neighborhood. Jill Scott. I come from that neck of the woods right there.
So can you tell us what it was like for you growing up in Philly?
Poverty, same thing that y'all probably deal with in Chicago. You know, in fact, right now I just read an article, very unfortunate to read it, that Chicago and New York has a black male homicide rate that exceeds that of U.S. soldiers stationed in places like Afghanistan. So black men are dying quicker in Chicago and Philadelphia than overseas in the military. You know, sorry to hear that, but very violent in Philadelphia. Philadelphia leads the nation in gentrification right now. And whenever you find a black city that's dealing with gentrification, you're also dealing with an intensification of conflict. Why? Because when you gentrify, you force enemies into a closer proximity with each other. So, for example, if you take Chicago, look at the sections of the city that white people are taking back. If you had a gang over here and a gang over here, okay, and by gang, I don't necessarily mean your traditional gangs, but just
is it breaking up on y'all's end too?
Set, whatever kind of set. And now the white man has come in and forcibly moved these black people out through real estate tax, eminent domain, or whatever. This gang that was 40 blocks away from you, you didn't have to see them unless you wanted to. They didn't have to see you unless they.
What is it doing? What's it doing? You said it's breaking up?
Yeah.
What, stuttering, or what? The video stuttering, or him? What?
Yeah, stuttering.
Fresh. You knows that too?
It's not doing that on my end.
Okay.
I got.
All right, but are you able to hear everything you're saying?
I got high speed internet. So.
Okay. So are you able to pick? Vulcan, are you able to pick up everything he's saying though?
I mean, I'm familiar with what he's saying.
Well enough to interrupt. You know what? While we're at a stop, I would like to say I don't like when he does this. I call it fear mongering, where it's like worst case scenario for every situation.
Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, he's taken a lot of long jumps and reaches to paint the bleakest picture, i.e., if you got a gang over here and a gang over there and they 40 blocks away, well, now they right close to each other and they got to deal with it. I'm like, bro, that's not more likely to happen than it is less likely to happen. Like, if it happens, then it happens. But he's painting that picture as if, like, bro, gentrification is creating these conflicts.
Yeah.
When I don't believe that's the case across the board.
And not only that, I mean, like, that's what LA's like. You know, LA can have gangs not that far from each other, within blocks of each other.
Chicago is like that too.
Yeah, so I mean, like, and again, I'm not
gentrification didn't create that.
Exactly.
No, Chicago, the homicide did go in early 2000 when they did knock down a lot of the projects in the city. From what residents, people that live in Chicago, the conflict did raise a little bit. Not even a little bit, it raised a lot.
What's y'all's opinion on gentrification as a whole? Not to take too far of a step off, but if gentrification, in my opinion, my personal opinion, when gentrification is moving out a negative element that's affecting our community, I don't actually see it as a bad thing. If it's improving the overall neighborhood, I understand the worry that it would be moving us out, but if the us that's in there need to be moved out for the good of the overall community, I don't see it as that big of a problem. I don't think all gentrification checks all those boxes, but some of them do. If you're knocking down a project that's a stronghold for negative black examples for our children, it's basically a factory for gangsters. You grow up in a certain area where you don't see a lot of other things because the projects are encapsulated. it's a segregated part of the city. You only see one thing. That's all you know. You knock down the projects, you expose those kids who grew up in that area to more. I don't necessarily see that as a negative.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the gentrification is, real estate investors. A lot of them, a lot of prominent Black real estate investors have gotten, wealthy off of the gentrification process. Some of them try to go out of the way to keep it Black to whatever extent they can, but in general, what's happened in white flight took place in the past. Now, a lot of that close to downtown area is premium real estate, obviously, because of its location. And people are going over there, buying those properties from people. People are getting, in some cases, getting paid a decent amount of money. In some cases, not so much. They're taking those properties, flipping them, making the places modern. And as they're building Chick-fil-A's and Longhorn Steakhouses, and depending upon what part of the country you live in, and the real estate's going up, the property taxes are going up in those areas, and so that's the process.
I think part of the complaint from the community is that when that type of stuff happens, certain people that look like us can't afford to live there. My thing is, I just don't like when people paint gentrification as conceptually negative as opposed to situationally negative.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's an excellent point. And I want to go back to your previous point with Dr. Umar as far as him doing the fear mongering. And it's all this kind of ties into propping himself up as a messiah. Because if there's no crisis, there's no need for a messiah, right?
There's no need for a savior.
Yeah. There's no need for it, and so a part of that is, and it's a distinction that me and Enos have discussed before about the difference between, fear is natural to human beings, but there's a difference between paranoia and a rational,
there you go, right,
and a rational caution. Being cautious of certain things from a rational perspective, and the difference is a paranoia has no rhyme or reason behind it. The person not providing you any type of metrics or rubric in order to be able to measure, whatever your perceived danger is against a real danger. So you're just stuck in paranoia.
It creates that fear on a wholesale, on a across the board scale, as opposed to people who want to dig into it. So let me find out about gentrification. Let me find out the negatives and the positives, and see if the negatives outweigh the positives, or vice versa. Where the way Umar is painting it is like gentrification is bad for Black people.
Yeah.
And Black people that are not willing to do their own research look at that and be like, gentrification is bad. When really a lot of those Black people in the community, we're talking about single mothers who have children. We're talking about people who want their kids to get out of a certain type of situation or a certain environment. Like, those types of things are good for them, even if they can't live in the same area, right? Because now when they gentrify, they're just not kicking people out. They're offering people money. They're offering people to move to different places. A change of scenery is often was often unavailable to those certain demographics before. Like, I live here because I have to live here. But when gentrification comes in, if you got a young child, a young man child, for example, and you're a single mother, you now have the opportunity to take your child out of the environment where he was almost certainly, right, if you're a working mother, he was almost certainly going to become what's outside, because he didn't have any other opportunity. He didn't have any other examples. Now you can move him somewhere else. It'll be struggle, right? Life is hard. I didn't say it should be easy, but the opportunities are now different with gentrification. And that's just an example. I'm not saying, for the audience, I am not saying all gentrification is good or bad. I'm pointing out that the way gentrification is vilified conceptually is misleading.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, how it's presented sometimes, especially with the audience is saying that. You got to be careful of that, because it is putting preconceived notions in a lot of the listeners' heads that's not willing to do the research. And I want to also add what I was saying earlier. Sometimes sometimes we can argue that gentrification is not solely based on race. I guess you can make an argument about that, but we have to consider it as
Consume. Yeah.
Um,
I know what you're saying. Let me.
Isms.
It
What's the other ism?
is. It's basically rich
I
versus
forgot the
poor.
ism.
We all
Yeah,
had a.
basically that. Yeah, basically
We
that.
all had
Yeah,
a brain fart there.
yeah.
Is it
So we got to
elitism? No, it's not
not
elitism.
elitism. Not capitalism. Start with a C. What I'm trying to say, man.
Classism.
Classism. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
We could argue it's classism. So that's what we have to
I would
keep that
argue
in
it's
mind.
classism.
Yeah.
Because it's not. I honestly don't think it's about stamping out the black race. I think it's about stamping out the poor. It just so
Just so happen
happens.
these neighborhoods are majority of the
Or
people
yeah.
that's in these
Hey,
neighborhoods
y'all,
are black.
just
So
we got a comment. Have y'all read or saw videos about Umar scamming folks about that school he's building? It's definitely fear mongering.
Yeah, we definitely. Well, I agree with that. I haven't read a whole bunch about him scamming or done any real research, but I have heard it floating around the internet. So
yeah,
I mean,
haven't
all
read
I
it.
know is he's been talking about it for mad long, and I've launched buildings before with major corporations. They don't take that long to stand up nothing.
Nah, school.
Yeah,
It should take some time for school, though. I give them that. This is something that is different, especially for somebody like somebody
shout
like
out to Lord
Umar.
Jamar.
So I will say this about Umar. You know, in our history, a lot of the so-called black leaders are usually given to us. Sometimes from a political party, a lot of times the liberals, and it's safe to say, and we have to give Umar props for him to be grassrooted and able to get as much money he has, what he says he has. Because if you're doing things on GoFundMe, I mean, you know, you can get charged with fraud or whatever. So he hasn't been charged with any of those. Hasn't been charged at all with fraud or anything. So I'm gonna have to assume that he's doing a legal business, you know, legitimate business. But y'all go
I think
ahead.
based on the evidence,
Y'all go ahead.
yeah. I don't actually have a problem with Umar. I think, excuse me, I think his motivations are pure. I think I have more of a problem with his technique, the way he goes about it.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, facts. I'll save my comment about the school until we get further in. So I know we're gonna go over that a little bit more later on.
All right. So y'all ready to get back?
Yeah.
All right.
They wanted to. But now, guess what? Where they hung out at, that's been reclaimed by the whites. So they have to move closer to you. So the reason why you see an intensification in violence in all the cities where there's gentrification is the gentrifiers don't care about community conflict. They don't care about gang zone. And so what's happening is we're being forced to operate in the same neighborhoods. And that's another reason why we see such a drastic spike in crime in Chicago and Philly.
Can you tell us when did you first take interest in Pan-Africanism?
Yes, sir. 4th grade. My parents divorced when I was in the 3rd or 4th. And where I lived at in North Philadelphia, we was living in Carolina with my father for a while in the military. When we came back to North Philly, I was born in North Philly. We came back to North Philly. As you know, your elementary school is assigned based on your address. And so the George G. Meade Elementary School that I attended at 18th and Oxford Street, named after a Caucasian Civil War general, it just so happened that year that I enrolled in the 4th grade, or my mother enrolled me there, they had a Black history class. It was not citywide. Philly would be the first city to institute mandatory Black history, but it didn't exist then. It just so happened that white principal and that Black vice principal somehow, some way gave us a Black history class 4th and 5th grade. They took it away in the 6th. So for those 2 years, Mrs. Green, who was the Black history teacher, she was my introduction into Black culture, Black consciousness, and public speaking. So there was a Black history public speaking contest, which I entered both grades, 4th and 5th. So 9 and 10 years old, I won first place. I never shut up since. And right around the corner from that elementary school, coincidence.
I might have to pull it back a little bit because you're going to go into talking about his public speaking, you know, and I think that's going to be really good to cover too. But before we get to that point, there is some research out there that suggests that Black people tend to do better intelligence, IQ wise, test score wise, when they're not attached to their history. Another way of saying that, when they're they don't know that much of a distinction between them and the dominant society. And this is not talking about America specifically. This is talking about outside of America. This is a particular example that I'm referencing, is that when Black people don't know that they're Black, or I won't say they don't know they're Black,
they don't realize that it matters.
Yeah, like, I mean, the best example I want to use is
historically.
Yeah, Carlton versus Fresh Prince, right? So Carlton, and you know, and obviously, some versions of him didn't know he was even Black, right? He was smart, straight A student, high SAT scores, high BAB scores, all that kind of stuff. And he wasn't like his dad, who grew up in the hood and came out of it. He was a kid raised pretty much in suburbia, you know, with a crazy amount of affluence, right? So I'm saying that to say that, and when it comes to people like that, there are some studies that suggest that when Blacks don't know about this connection they have to the past, and they're just focusing on the immediate future, and they assimilate more into dominant culture, and they take on the values of the dominant culture around them, they tend to do better IQ-wise, and they tend to do better test score-wise. So again, I'm not saying that's better overall. I'm not making the case that's better overall. I'm just saying, monetarily speaking, or scholastically speaking, there is some studies that suggest that that's better for the Black person than to be connected to their ancestral past.
Based on your example of Carlton, I think that would be closer connected to his affluence than it would be to his color, or anyone's color in that situation. I only say that because, well, I'll ask this question before I continue. Well, does that same concept apply to a Black child who grows up around poor white children and doesn't realize? Do they excel, or is Carlton's?
But before I answer your example real quick, and I'll get to your example, so please don't think I'm going to try to avoid it. But I want to address what you said, which was, is it more based off his affluence or his lack of connection to Black culture? He had Will Smith living in the same household who did not assimilate into dominant white culture like he did, but they both had the same affluence.
Correct.
So they both had the same affluence. Will Smith still was having Trey or Ice Cube, whatever his name was, flying out to come see him. He still dressed like he was from Philly. He still wore his hair like he's from Philly, right? And he didn't have the test scores that Carlton had. He didn't have the vocabulary that Carlton had. He didn't have any of that
Carlton
stuff.
grew up with that affluence and that environment.
For sure. So again, it's not going to be a perfect picture, and if we're saying that distinction.
Well, I'm asking if it applies across the board, and when I say across the board, not like 100% out of 100%, but does it apply for a Black child who grew up in affluence, which would naturally, in America at least, put him around more affluent Caucasian children? Does it apply in that situation the same way it would apply to maybe someone who goes to a predominantly white school in the country somewhere, where you're not rich, you just don't realize that the differences between you and the folks around you matters that much? So is it more colorism? Not colorism. That's not the phrase I'm looking for. Is it more race based, or is it more income based? I.e., if I'm rich, some of the barriers that affect poor people in my that look like me, they don't affect me.
Well, from my understanding of the study, even Black kids that grow up in affluence don't do as well as their white counterparts in that same neighborhood, SAT wise or grades wise. So I don't think it's the affluence. I think that if you're a Black kid in suburbia, you're still watching Medea TV shows and the Parkers, people of our generation, right? With a working vocabulary that's probably high school level at best.
Okay.
Versus a Black kid who's watching. What's your show you like to watch? With those smart guys on there. Milton. What's the? Because I'll use Frasier and Seinfeld as an example, but the Big Bang Theory.
Big Bang Theory, yeah, so I like that.
Listen to the robust vocabulary in Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
Versus the vocabulary when you're watching a Tyler Perry TV show.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. And those shows are catering to different demographics. So to your point, you're essentially saying it doesn't have as much to do with affluence as it has to do with race, according to that study.
I would say
culture.
What culture you assimilate? What culture are you?
Okay,
because this
culture, I will take that.
Because this culture is going to cultivate you, right?
That makes more sense.
Black folks watch more TV than anybody else.
Right, we do consume more media.
Yeah, and so we're watching movies and TV shows that we identify with the culture there. So if you have a black kid who his favorite shows tend to be the most popular shows, which are the predominantly white shows, right? So he's watching Friends as opposed to Living Single. I watch Living Single. I'm not saying that this applies to me necessarily, but I'm just saying that you're gonna notice a difference in their diction at some point.
The vocabulary, the way they speak, and the way they carry themselves.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Dr. Umar, well, we got a question saying, "Why is that?" By the bars, the rapper himself from back in the day, Marcus, the rapper.
Yeah, I remember he cooked you in the game room one time.
He was the coldest, man.
Shout out to Marcus. I still remember.
Hey, ask him to expound on his question. Why is what?
Yeah, he can hear us on there. So yeah, maybe he'll put something in there or whatever. Maybe we gotta put a link out and get him to join the show. But yeah. So anyways, there's studies that show black kids, and Dr. Umar's going to cover this as well in this one I believe, but black kids, I don't know, the numbers aren't going to be exactly accurate because I'm going off my memory, but like from 4 to 6, black kids have the similar IQs to white kids, other Asian kids, whatever the kind of kids there are. By the time that kid's like 8 years old, his IQ has dropped below the other kids, kids of other ethnicities, and what the studies seem to show is because now this kid is watching shows and being influenced by a certain culture that has different values than maybe the dominant, we can call it white culture, pop culture.
I want to make two distinctions. First,
I'm gonna read Marcus's question after you make the distinctions. Go ahead.
Okay. First, for the audience, I want to clarify that we are purposely differentiating between race and culture. Oftentimes they're closely tied together, but in this particular case, we're talking about how you grow up and what environment you grow up as opposed to how you look.
The reason
secondly, in my opinion, I don't think that we are, I'm not saying, and I don't think Vulcan is saying that we should switch, right? I don't think they're saying we should give up our culture. My opinion is we should just be encouraged to expand it.
Or examine it.
Well, I would say this. I am, and we're going to get to this question here shortly, but I am in some saying we should shed major components of the culture. And the reason why is because in the totality of the culture,
right,
some elements of the culture is antithetical to intellectual progress.
I agree with that, but I think you can maintain your identity while also expanding your intellect. So when I say I'm still going to watch Fresh Prince, but I'm also going to watch Seinfeld.
But
I'm not gonna trade them. I'm not gonna give up Fresh Prince for Seinfeld.
Sure. But in the show, the parody was Carlton. Maybe the parody should have been Will Smith.
Understood. I think they show in that particular show, and I understand what you're saying. So let me state that first. I do understand what you're saying, but in that particular show, I think they showed multiple parallels where one was better than the other, and vice versa, and not person but situation, culture wise. Yeah. And I think that show actually did a good job of identifying and exemplifying my point, whereas culture over intellect or vice versa is not the answer. I think it's a combination and an expansion, right? Because oftentimes there was episodes where Carlton had to understand where he came from, either from Will or from his father. And then there was oftentimes where Will was learning a lesson where it's like, yeah, where you came from shouldn't shape you indefinitely. There's other things out there.
Yeah, and some of those values inhibit your social mobility in the future. But I want to put a pin in that, and I want to read Marcus's comment here. It says,
go ahead.
How can a black kid and a white kid grow up under the same circumstances socioeconomically, yet have two wildly different outcomes? So do you want to tackle that first, or you want to fresh? Or how you want to go?
Go ahead,
like I said,
I'll read it again. Should I read it again?
Yeah. For the audience.
Yeah, for the audience. How can a black kid and a white kid grow up under the same circumstances socioeconomically, yet have two wildly different outcomes?
Well, I think we touched that earlier. You heard Vulcan say this and Fresh, culture-wise. The reason why Fresh made a good point about separating race and culture, the Nigerians and Black Americans are the same race, but they have two different cultures. And they have two different outcomes in their career, the way they live. So that's another example. That's one of the examples you can go off of.
And they live in the same neighborhood a lot of times.
To simplify the example, Darius did a good job of explaining it. To simplify it a little bit more, poor white kids are watching Friends and Seinfeld, while poor black kids are watching the Parkers, Tyler Perry shows, things that glorify the identification. While yes, this is how I grow up, this is what I recognize, I identify with this. They're glorifying it as if this is what's supposed to be happening, as opposed to identifying it as something you want to get out of. In our culture, I don't know any other culture that ostracizes intellect like ours.
And you see that. I don't want to keep harping on that show, the show Fresh Prince. But you see that play out where when Don Cheadle's character comes to visit Will Smith.
Ice pick, man. Come on, man.
Okay, hold on.
Show your work, man. Show your work. I'm from the culture.
Yeah. So Marcus is saying, so we recognize that the issue is definitely culture. Question mark. Yes. Absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to make the differentiation for the audience, that we're not saying that it's a black-white thing, as opposed to a difference in local culture.
And I want to speak to that point. I oftentimes see this in these conversations, even by people who are intellectual. They tend to equivocate the ethnicity and or race and the culture. So they'll say, "You're not acting black. Black is not an act that you can do. It's like saying you're acting two. Not to the age, but to the number. I should say you're acting purple. Or
you're acting white because you use proper diction."
Yeah, and so I'm saying is that you can't act a color. You can act a certain culture. If by that you mean that the dominant white culture tends to articulate themselves better, and I'm in step with that, then for sure. Then you're saying that I'm acting more along the lines of, and so he's putting the hands up thing. So he's definitely on board with that right there.
All right.
So that's a major distinction, and so I want to make one little quick example, because I love black shows and white shows, like I'm sure all of us do here. I watched Seinfeld and Frasier, but I also watched Martin and Fresh Prince. I watched, we're brothers, and was the end.
Happy, and we're singing, and we're colored. Give me a high five.
But I could watch on the Medea TV show where they'll say, somebody will be blabbering and they'll be like, "You ain't talking about nothing," right? Then I can see in Seinfeld them saying, "I'm tired of poring over the mundane minutia of everyday life." They both said the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But one of them was going to be on my SAT test my junior year in high school.
Right.
And one of them is how my family speaks.
Right.
And it's not going to help me communicate in a job interview in the future.
Correct. It's not going to help you. That. And from a parental standpoint, we all have kids. But from a parental standpoint, your job as a parent is to prepare your child for outside. Even if you disagree with how outside runs, right? If you agree, or if you feel like, hey, the white man is out to get us outside, let's just say that's true. You should be preparing your child to survive in that jungle, as opposed to preparing them to to hide from it or to scoff at it, because all you're doing is crippling them for reality. If you ensconce your child in our culture without exposing them to what's really going on outside, you're doing that child a disservice. You're crippling them as an adult, because you're not always going to be able to protect them the same way you would when they're a child.
One thing I heard a prominent scholar online say: don't treat your children nicer than the world will treat your children.
Thank you.
And I think that kind of goes alongside with what you're saying right there. But I want to let the audience know, feel free to send your questions. I'm reading the questions on Facebook. I'm about to make sure I'm starting to read the questions on YouTube as well. But if you have any questions, feel free to send them in there. We love to tackle a lot of the things that people have in their minds and stuff like that. We'll do our best. So let's
we definitely want to interact with the people.
All right. You ready to get back into it?
People's champ. Shout out to the Rock.
All righty. Here we go.
Contest, which I entered both grades, 4th and 5th. So 9 and 10 years old, I won first place. I never shut up since. And right around the corner from that elementary school, coincidentally, was the international headquarters of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. So this is the Marcus Garvey movement, the organization that gave us the red, black, and green flag, largest black organization of all time. Malcolm X come out of there. Elijah Poole, who became Elijah Muhammad, came out of there. Many of your other black nationalist organizations leaders were members of the Garvey movement. And ironically, where my mother bought my shoes from, my sneakers, Hollywood sneaker store, no longer stands, was right next door to the Garvey movement. So my entire childhood, my mother was buying my footwear right next door to the Garvey movement, but I never knew it was the Garvey movement because it had no sign. So when I graduated from undergrad, Millersville University, Lancaster County, PA, I get back to North Philly. I'm walking up the street one day because I was a member of the NAACP of Philadelphia. I started the college chapter at Millersville University, and I see Garvey's picture in the window. I see the red, black, and green. So I'm thinking some new people just moved in with some consciousness. Elder Johnny Gossett walks out. Rest in peace to him. He's an ancestor now. In fact, all the elders who raised me in the Garvey movement, all but 1 or 2 are ancestors. And he said, can I help you? Because I'm staring at the picture of Garvey. And I said, what's going on in this building? He said, this is the UNIA ACL. Come back at 3 o'clock. We'll teach you all about it. So Mr. Garvey's organization back in Jamaica in 1914, the mass meetings were held Sundays at 3 o'clock, and they still are more than 100 years later. So I came to the mass meeting. I was, I want to say 22, 21, 22. This is right after the Million Man March, maybe a year or 2 after the Million Man March.
Did we just jump forward in the video? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I feel like we just jumped ahead in the video.
You think so? I don't think we did. The last thing, because James said he was going to talk more about. We had 7 minutes, 7 minutes and 23 seconds.
Okay, yeah. it was getting choppy.
I know talking about at one point he was talking about like he was a great orator in school.
And then it jumped ahead to the Million Man March. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it jumped ahead, but I know that we didn't get to that part.
Hey, why Umar sitting on that couch like somebody girl at a party sitting between 2 dudes? Got his knees together and everything.
Wow. No, but I kept
hey.
Yeah, I kept it. The video was on pause. I actually rewinded the video 5 or 10 seconds. I remember James said we wanted to be able to hear his next point. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, maybe I missed it. But because my point, I don't know if he probably already said at this point, but I just want to say one thing I always respected about Dr. Umar, and he talks about in this video, is how great of an orator he is. His ability to communicate his points is top tier. It's he talks about he's been gifted in that way since he was a young person. So
he just said that. He just said that, didn't he?
I think James is addressing that point.
Oh, okay. I just
which makes me feel even
Ready to
more
get
of a
back
way
into it?
because he doesn't have to communicate the way he does. He has a skill set to communicate more effectively, and which gives people a choice. He doesn't. I don't think he has to use fear mongering. I think it's a tactic.
Yeah, and again, when I'm hearing fear mongering, I'm saying using paranoia as opposed to a healthy caution about things that are dangerous that we should be watchful of.
You know what though? Let me say something about that real quick. And this is going to sound wild, but it's also going to be indicative of the way I see why Umar communicates that way. I work in safety. In safety, a healthy percentage of my job is protecting people from themselves, right? When I say that, I am saying I have to plan for the lowest common denominator. My military folks will feel this. We've had so many safety briefings in our careers that sound ludicrous. They sound like something we would never do, right? But when you're dealing with a large organization, you have to plan and speak to the lowest common denominator, i.e., hey, nobody go out into the town and get a stripper pregnant, right? There's several people, the vast majority of that organization is going to feel like, I would never do that. The problem is somebody did do that.
In that way. The military is similar.
That's what I'm saying. Somebody did do that. So when you have to plan for the lowest common denominator, right? The lowest intellectual level in your organization, you have to address things down there, right? Because you have to make sure, like, so you're counting on the higher intellect individuals to be able to police themselves. Thank you. Be able to police themselves accordingly.
That better be tea.
I mean, it might be some tea in there. That being said, while I may understand, I feel like that's how Umar communicates with the Black community, but I don't agree with it while I understand it, because I feel like he's communicating the way he communicates with us because he feels like most of us aren't intelligent enough to have the real discourse with. So it's like, I could have this conversation with y'all, but I don't think y'all will be able to get it. I would rather just, I would rather just say, don't touch the stove, right?
There's videos online where he repeats himself 3 times. Come to Detroit on the 6th, I'll be going over blah, blah, blah. Come to Detroit on the 6th, I'll be going over blah, blah, blah. There's videos of parodies and about him doing that kind of thing because he looks at his audience as being about low-hanging fruit as a general principle for himself.
Right.
But
so the technique and the tactic is effective, which if you look at his following, you can see. But the reasoning, the motivation behind using that tactic says you don't think that the majority of us, of the community, your target audience is intelligent enough to have the higher level conversation, to actually converse with you about it. Like, let's have a real conversation. I don't think enough of y'all are intelligent enough to do that. So I'm gonna just tell you, it's scary outside. Don't go out there.
But is there some truth to that? Is there some truth? Because a lot of times when I'm reading a lot of the comments in his videos, I hear the same thing in the comments. He doesn't have people on his level interviewing him. So
there is some truth to it.
Okay. That's what I was gonna say. Like, you're gonna hear this guy that he's interviewing him mispronounce, I think, like simultaneously, or he mispronounced.
Nah, it's not simultaneously. It's another word, but he does mispronounce.
I can't remember what word it was, but he mispronounced like 3 or 4 words. I think he mispronounced a word already. I think it was Pan-African. He couldn't say Pan-African. And I'm not saying this to insult the young man who's interviewing him. I'm saying that Dr. Umar is going to brag on how he's intellectually superior to all the people around him, and that nobody can handle his intellectual prowess and his respective discipline.
But he's not sparring with people who can match his intellect. He's cherry picking.
Yeah,
he's cherry picking. He doing what they say Floyd did.
And just so the audience knows, that's called reference group bias.
Go Google it.
Group bias. So y'all need to Google it.
I'm telling you, listen, we about learning. Go Google it.
So
say it again, James.
I'm gonna give you a little snippet. Reference group bias. Reference group bias is whenever you base something off a certain reference group, and that's where you draw your comparison for where you or somebody else may stand. For an example, if I'm playing basketball with a bunch of first graders as a 30-something-year-old man, I'm like LeBron and Michael Jordan out there. So somebody
and I'm gonna tell people I cooked.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell people I cook. People ask me, how good are you? Man, I'm the best one I play with. I mean, ain't nobody I play with better than me. And it's true.
Right.
For that reference group.
Oftentimes that's how political surveys are conducted. They go to an area, or they go to a demographic where they feel like the answers, there you go, my man. They feel like the answers or the opinions of the people in that demographic are going to align with the pre-chosen opinion or perspective. And then they're going to come back and say, hey, we interviewed 100 people, and out of those 100 people, 95 of them agreed with me.
Yeah, the only time I've really seen Dr. Umar get challenged was when he went on the Roland Martin show. When Roland Martin, who's a very smart man, and his panel that he had along with them, they were able to spar with Dr. Umar on his level, slightly below or slightly better.
Didn't you say that descended into name calling though?
It did descend into name calling, and I won't even go into that because I don't want to get back to the video because we still got a lot of video to cover. But I'll just say yes, it did. It did. If anybody want to check that out, Roland Martin, Dr. Umar Johnson, check it out. He was on the panel with a bunch of people who were 5 or 6 people who were just as intelligent or around the same intelligence as him, and it ended up being a name calling session. And the thing is, when you look at other intellectuals, I won't name these intellectuals because people have varying opinions about these guys. But if you're a scientist, if you're, let me switch gears. Say this one point right here. Economist, historian said this, and it was really fitting. He goes, if an engineer is not good at what he does, or if he's okay, we're going to know because his byproduct is going to be demonstrable in front of us. It's going to be visible. If a chess champion, he's going to win or he's going to lose. An NBA player is going to win or going to lose. When people talk about social issues, it's not going to be testable. It's not falsifiable. So when Dr. Umar is saying socially the world should be like this, socially the world should be like that, right? When he's saying that kind of a thing, there's no way for us to test his theories. I'm not saying he's wrong about everything he's saying, but there's no way to demonstrate it. When he says the white power structure does this, black people need to get this, that's all theory. It's all theory. Right. And so guys in that space, if they're not working in collaboration with other intellectuals, having their stuff peer reviewed, having their stuff vetted, having those who are just as much abreast on the issue as they are to cross-reference them, or iron sharpen iron, then they're going to be woefully out of the loop on what's happening, and they're not going to be prepared to be actually in the academic or intelligentsia with the other greats because they don't have the same level of competition. Competition will bring out the best out of you.
Historically, Dr. Umar frames his point of view as the answer as opposed to an answer. Oftentimes he's not willing to be open to other perspectives. It's just either it's my way or you not for the people. And I'm not saying that that's his viewpoint. I'm saying it comes off of that as that oftentimes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, especially when you hear people. Y'all hear me, Pop?
Yeah, I can
see what you're saying, especially when people are disagreeing with him in his comments. And he's like blocking you or name calling McClellan. Yeah, sometimes it can come off that way. Yeah, I can see.
So I want to read a few comments when y'all are ready. So we got
go ahead.
We got Marcus saying, "Wow, I feel that and hate that at the same time, but I get it because I feel the same because I really be outside." We got Lamar Anderson. Shout out to Lamar Anderson. St. Philip's days, baby.
Yeah.
He got Charleston White greater than Dr. Umar, and then you got Marcus said, "My boy said woefully out of the loop."
Where you learning words from? Who taught you octagon?
Who taught you octagon? Shout out to Chris Rock. But yeah, let's dig back in the video. If y'all you know,
Right.
that's the point.
Let's go.
More than 100 years later. So I came to the mass meeting. I was, I want to say, 22, 21, 22. This is right after the Million Man March, maybe a year or two after the Million Man March. And I went there and I never left. And so here I am. I've been a member for about 25, 26 years. In the Garvey movement, just like Malcolm, just like Elijah Poole, just like Carlos Cooks, just like many other people came to the Garvey movement, it was the foundation of my public speaking career because my first out-of-city speaking engagements were done on behalf of the UNIA. And so then shortly after that, 2005, we're at the African American Museum in Philadelphia downtown, and myself and Dr. Julius Garvey, he's the younger son of Marcus Garvey. He's a thoracic surgeon in New York. There was an exoneration program to clear Marcus Garvey's name from the illegal charges placed on him by J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI in the early 1920s. Because although President Calvin Coolidge commuted his sentence in 27, which resulted in his deportation, they never removed the charges. So Dr. Garvey, his son, is still working to get those charges off of his father's name. So as a member of the UNIA at the time, I was Minister of Education and first vice president for the Philadelphia division. That's when I met Dr. Garvey. I was at the exoneration program. Young brother was there, said you need to go to Africa. I ended up going to Africa the next year, come back from Africa. I quit as Minister of Education and first vice president, still remaining a member. And 5 years later, I come to Chicago. Brother Dawa Yisrael, rest in paradise to him. He passed away last year, I believe. He said, you need to come to Chicago. I got a public access TV station. I can't get you up here, but I would love to interview. So I flew to Chicago, September 18th, 2010. That's the anniversary of Booker T. Washington's Atlanta Cotton Exposition speech. We did the interview. As we're leaving out, I asked Brother Dawa, I said, can I have a copy of that interview on the DVD? Brother Dawa said, it's the only one I got. I said, no problem. Mail me one later. Then at the last minute, he said, you know what? Take this one. He gives me the DVD. 6 weeks later, I'm speaking in Harlem, New York for the first time. National Black Theater, 125th and 5th. This is where Garvey, this is where Malcolm, this is where most of the Pan-Africanists had their start. So I have copies of the Chicago interview, September 18th, in my hand, October 30th, the night before Halloween in Harlem. And I disseminated that DVD there. And overnight, I became the biggest name in Black consciousness. 13 years later, I'm still the biggest name in Black consciousness.
Now, I want to just break down some of what you just shared with us. You kept mentioning UNIA.
Yes.
Which stands for Universal Negro Improvement Association.
And African Communities League, 7 letters.
Right. And can you kind of elaborate on exactly what Pan-Africanism is for those that don't know?
Absolutely. I would
Hey, pause it real quick before he goes into it.
4 principles, right? Number one.
Yes, sir.
I want to say this because I've seen this interview before, and I'm going to say this and we can move on. I don't want to discuss it right now, but at some point, I want to have already made my point. He's going to say, and I'm going to paraphrase, he's going to say that Pan-Africanism does not set itself against, or is not against like any religion, right? It's just saying you can do what you want to do, but you are Black first. He may not do it, but there's several Pan-African believers or subscribers that set Pan-Africanism in direct opposition to Christianity. The one of the bigger examples, or one of the most recent examples, there's a battle rapper named B Dot. If you watch battle rap, if you follow battle rap, we know B Dot lyrically is a beast, but he's also a staunch Pan-Africanist. He's battled several Christian-based battle rappers, and that conflict between the two belief systems is often the bulk of all of his rounds. He actually got famous. He actually went viral the first time, destroying a guy based on his belief in Christianity. that being said, I'm gonna just move on because he's gonna say a few things that are not necessarily supported in my experience with the Pan-African community. Go ahead.
But that could be just the followers, right?
It could be.
You
So
know,
I'm not knocking Pan-Africanism
well,
for it. I'm just saying.
I say some of the followers, because when you read Marcus Garvey's book, he mentioned that too. That was one of the things he advocated, that don't take the religion from. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but black people need to have a religion, whether they're Catholic, Christian. I think he was Catholic. I can't remember.
Right.
But yeah, some of the followers, they tend to do their own thing at times. But keep in mind, the way I look at Pan-Africanism is the way Umar probably look at Pan-Africanism is a political movement, not necessarily religion. And I guess I get what you're saying. Pan-Africanism is a political movement, but it comes off like it's a religion, though.
Correct.
Yeah. So
there's fervent about it. There's radical about it. In some places. I'm not knocking, just like I don't think you can knock Christianity based on its most radical members.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not knocking Pan-Africanism
or any religion.
I'm just or any correct. I'm just saying, based on what he's saying and also what Garvey said, there's a lot of Pan-Africanist followers that don't either understand or don't share that belief.
Well, for my whole thing, so I want to read these comments first before I can jump back into it again. So we got Marcus saying that man has much game.
Who?
And he put, I'm assuming Dr. Umar Johnson. Then he sat up and sold himself in that whole dissertation.
He did. I noticed that the first time too. I said, "Man, he hyping himself up, boy. God damn."
That's the title of this show, and we haven't really covered that yet. So I want to really speak quick, which is it's exploring the messianic complex, and then it has a parentheses ION because of course he's a Pan-African, so the complexion thing is really important for him. But the messianic complex, everything that he's saying, is meant to prop him up as the next Messiah, and
as the one with the solution as opposed to a solution. Like my way is the way, guys.
Exactly. Some people might look at that and think of it as a bit of an extreme. But anytime somebody's saying their particular ideology is more potent and more encompassing than a spirituality, you're getting at the very basis of a human being's purpose and reason. At the bedrock of our perspective, our worldview is our spiritual beliefs. Whether you're atheistic, or nihilistic, you're agnostic, you're Christian, Muslim, whatever you are, that's your bedrock. And so,
can we say slash? Can we say slash philosophy?
Yeah, slash philosophy.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
if that's the case,
philosophies, your ontological philosophies, which are spiritualities, the nature of things, like how we define things that can't be defined by other things. We start off with these beliefs, and so my thing is,
if we're gonna say ontological, can y'all hear me fine?
Yeah.
If we're gonna say ontological, it's safe to say is ontology. Dr. Umar's ontology is black existentialism. It's safe to say that.
Yeah,
so that's his bedrock philosophy.
Yeah.
Y'all,
and that's a religion.
Yeah. So I might actually pull that up. But go ahead. I didn't want to cut. Go ahead, finish your statement.
Well, no, go ahead. I want to go into the bit because he hasn't really said. Has he really said it yet, or we kind of prematurely kind of?
Nah, we're in the intro part still, but he's about to go into Pan-Africanism, which I think will be beneficial for the audience if they're not familiar with the religion. He does a good job of explaining the core tenets.
Okay.
All right, here you go. Y'all ready?
Yes, sir.
All African people are one family. Whether you're light skinned with straight hair, whether you're dark skinned with nappy hair, whether you're in Brazil speaking Portuguese, whether you're in Chicago speaking Ebonics, whether you're in London speaking the King's English, whether you're in South Africa
colorist
Zulu or Nigeria speaking Igbo, if you're in Kenya speaking Maasai, we one race. It don't matter what the religion is. It don't matter what the nationality is. It don't matter what the complexion is, the hair color, one people. And we believe that we should identify as African people first, above and beyond anything else. So you're not a Christian who happens to be black. You're a black man who happens to be a Christian. And why is that? You chose Christianity. People leave the church every day. People leave the mosque every day.
Yeah, I want to speak to.
Keep going.
I mean, I was going to wait till he finishes because I don't want to cut him off midpoint and drag this thing out longer. It needs to be dragged out. But yeah, again, it's a sleight of hand in a sense, like, from especially from an Abrahamic perspective, you leave and cleave to your wife. You don't choose who your mom and your dad is, who even your kids are to a certain extent, or your siblings. You do choose who you build your family with. Mm-hmm. And from an Abrahamic religious perspective, that person becomes one person with you. And the reason why I say that, I'm just using that as to be analogous to this point about you don't choose to be black, but you choose, your religion, right? Now the thing is, I can theologically dispute whether you choose your religion, but for humanly speaking, I have to agree with them on that, right? Humanly speaking, I wouldn't even split hairs about that point. But what I do want to say is this right here: what you choose is more says more about you than what you had no choice in. There's a lot of ascribed statuses about me that I didn't choose. My height, my hair texture, my eye color, right? Are all those on the same level as my blackness? Because based off what he's saying, if you don't choose it, then it's more important than your religion. How is my hair texture more important than my spirituality that I've chosen?
You think he's conceptually saying that across the board?
Well, the whole
that what you are is more important than what you choose, or
to me, for it to make sense, he'd have to be saying that, because if you're going to say that you're a black person that happens to be Christian, not a Christian that happens to be black,
right?
Now my whole thing is like, that's not a good argument for why we should put our blackness over our spirituality. When the slaves were being enslaved by the slave master, going through rape, going through all kind of hardships, they weren't praying to their blackness and their melanin in their skin. They were praying to a deity above and beyond their horrible circumstances.
Right.
And so if the bedrock was our race, I would pray to my race. You see what I'm saying? If that was my color, my melanin, if that was the most important thing because I didn't choose it, or my height, or whatever else I didn't choose. But
do you think he's setting them against each other, or he's just prioritizing? And I'm just at this point, I'm playing devil's advocate, because it doesn't sound like he's saying one over the. Well, he is saying one over the other, but not one or the other.
I'm saying you can't do it without the other. You can't prioritize things. What we're doing is we're creating a hierarchy in our head.
Right.
Of what's most important, right?
So you're saying he is doing that, which I agree with you. He's saying black before race before religion. Mm-hmm. Where you're saying the opposite, or you're saying they hold equal ground?
Religion, I'm saying there's no context in which race or religion makes sense, because a race does not provide any type of ontological or epistemological or spiritual foundation to give us reason to wake up in the morning. We need something outside of time, space, and matter, i.e. spirituality, right?
Tracking.
That's what our slave ancestors use. Mm-hmm. That's what our moms and our parents and our grandparents use in difficult times in their life. They don't pray to their blackness. They don't go, well, my blackness will get me through this. They go, I'm hoping God will get me through this. I'm hoping there's some being more powerful than myself that can see the end from the beginning that I cannot see. And that hope is going to get me through this troubled journey that I'm on.
Correct.
Color can't do that. Melanin can't do that. Height can't do that. So in what way can your color, your melanin, be a higher on the hierarchical structure of what's important in your life than your spirituality? It makes no sense.
I agree with that. I agree with that. The spirituality, what you believe in, and this is outside of whether you believe it's real or not, right? It's just the belief that we're talking about right now, and what the belief allows you as a person to do. It transcends the race.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like I said, if he's an existentialist, then existence precedes essence. So,
and I just want to say for the audience,
hey Darius, bring up that definition.
Yeah, and
you
also,
said black existentialist. Bring that up.
Yeah, audience, feel free to bring up the black existentialist, and audience, feel free to leave comments, ask any kind of questions you might have. Because it's not just to go over Dr. Umar's interview, which he's a great orator and he does a really good job explaining his beliefs. we're not here to deride him or to disrespect him in any kind of way. We're here to point out the good and the bad, point out the sophistry, point out the things that are just good rhetoric because he's a great orator.
It's just examination. We just giving a deeper look.
That's it.
And if only because oftentimes because he's such a great orator, right? Because he is pro-black, I don't think enough people are actually looking deeper.
Well, let me. That's 100% true, but it's also because his circuit is not the most intellectually astute. Like,
right.
I'm just going to give examples. I'm not saying whether I agree with these people or don't agree with them. When you watch Ben Shapiro, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Roland Martin, Larry Elder, Don Lemon, whoever it is you see that's debating issues like socioeconomic issues, racial issues, they're bringing on the best and the brightest around the world. So they have to have their ducks in a row, whether they win or they lose.
Correct.
Dr. Umar is not traveling in those circuits.
No, he's on DJ University, and that's not a slight to DJ University, but DJ University isn't intellectually staunch enough to challenge Dr. Umar's theories, whether right or wrong. He can't challenge him at this point. He's just asking questions. Like, hey, he's giving him a platform to get his message out there, as opposed to challenging or asking him to go deeper or explain deeper. It's just like, hey, what are you about? Give us your message. He's not giving any pushback on any of his points.
Yeah, that's
chill.
So we can just read this real quick and then get back to the video.
Yeah, it's a school of thought that critiques the domination and affirms the empowerment of Black people in the world, although it shares the word existentialism and that philosophy's concerns with existence and meaning in life is predicated on the liberation of all Black people of the world from oppression. It may be seen as a method which allows one to read works by African American writers such as W. Du Bois, James Baldwin, and Ralph Ellison. In an existentialist frame, Lewis Gordon argues that the Black existentialism is not only essential, you gotta help me with that, philosophy produced for the Black philosophers, but also the thought that addresses the intersection of problems of the existence in Black context.
Future references, because of your mouth surgery, we can let me freshly read from now on. But
but chill. He did a good job. Get out of here.
Yeah, with your mouth surgery, your voice isn't the same, and you kind of have a little bit of a slur there or something. So,
bro, 50 Cent got better after his surgery, bro. Get off.
I was gonna read it again for the audience, but that's cool. They can take a look.
Oh, you want to? Yeah.
No, they can Google it. They can Google it on their phone. Let's move on to the video.
All right, let's go. All right, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
People leave the Jehovah's Witness temple every day. People renounce their U.S. citizenship every day. People become citizens of countries they had no affiliation with every day. But what is the one thing you belong to that you can never change? It's your racial group membership. And who chose your racial group membership? Almighty God. So for us, being African is the most spiritual and it is the most sacred identity you can have because it is fixed by God and you can never change it. So that's
you see that right there? But look, let's pause that right. Let's pause that right there. So when he says that being Black is the most spiritual, he is in effect saying Black is a spirituality. You see what I'm saying? So he's saying that your spirituality as a Black person should supersede your spirituality, whether you're Muslim, Hindu, Zoroastrian, whatever it is, you worship Thor, or Zeus. He's saying that it goes above that. And the issue with that is this: if Blackness is the highest spirituality for Black people, whiteness is the highest spirituality for white people, yellowness, or brownness is the highest spirituality for them. Where does that lead? And my whole thing about him, I'm not here to dispute whether he's right or wrong about that point. I want the audience to hear. These are competing religions. These are competing spiritualities. But his spirituality that he's pushing on the rest of us, or I shouldn't say pushing, that he's elucidating and his broad audience is less vetted, right? It hasn't been around for centuries. There's no historical record, or there's no archaeological record of what he's talking about right here as Black. I'm talking about Black specifically as a spirituality. We know in Africa there's all kinds of spiritualities from South Africa to Western Africa to Northern Africa. There's a bunch of different spiritualities in place. My point is, but when he says black is a spirituality, the highest spirituality, he's asking people, I'm the prophet. I'm Muhammad. Black is the Islam. I am the prophet. And he's propping himself up in that way. So I want to read a comment here, and I want you to speak to it. By Marcus right here. The common folk get lost in the semantics if it's not spirit-led. But I feel it. Every race needs the Lord. And then shout out to Dr. Peterson. Facts. But there is no competition, bro.
Hey, let me ask a question, or let me pose a question. Do you think that let me figure out how my phrase this. Do you think that Dr. Umar is taking advantage of the fact that the vast majority of his target audience is not going to go actually do the research on what he's saying? Or do you think the onus is more on the target audience who prefers not to go do the research?
I think it's both, but I'd say even bigger than that. The audience, not only will they not do the research on what he's saying, one, because he's such an amazing communicator, and he's very intelligent, very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And just like a lot of great leaders, we know how to
Hitler was a genius. And I'm not comparing Umar to Hitler. I'm saying
I say that. I thought that in my head, but I wasn't gonna actually say it.
But I want to make the distinction because Hitler had a massive following. Just because he has a massive following, he's good at what he does, doesn't subsequently make him right. It doesn't make his point of view right.
And you can put a lot of right in there. There was a saying that says to corrupt an entire ship's water supply, you only need less than you only need a couple spoonfuls of oil,
right?
To corrupt, and the quote the Bible would say a little leaven leavens the whole lump. So you heard it with G. Craig back in the day with a rat poison is 99% good ingredients. But that strict
exactly
kill you dead.
It kill you dead.
And so I think with Dr. Umar, he's been a repository of information. I've learned a lot from him, and I will continue to do so. But we have to understand. I think he doesn't. I think he knows that his audience is not able to see the wolf behind the sheep. Like I am, and when I say wolf, I don't mean a wolf in negative. I want to say like if a religious guy gets up, if an imam from Islam or a pastor stands up, people already have preconceptions of what a pastor believes, what his biases are. A Buddhist, monk, whatever it is, we already know their biases, all that kind of stuff. So we look at them as a religious leader, and we're able to vet them a little differently because we know their background. When a lot of these guys, Dr. Umar types, come up, we don't know his religious beliefs that well because you can't, when you research it, not a lot of information comes up about it. Right. And so they dwell in, they live in ambiguity. So we don't know. Is he a scholar like what's a black Marcus Lamont Hill, or is he Jesse Jackson, or a religious figure, Creflo Dollar? We don't know what category to put him in. But what I'm telling the audience is that he is a Creflo Dollar. He is a Rizza Islam. He's a guy who comes from a religious background. You may not know as well as your native religion is probably Christianity if you're in the Western world, but this guy should be looked at as a religious leader.
Because you're saying that's what he's trying to set himself up as.
He is setting himself up as that, and so you should look at its competing religions. The religion that you already have versus the religion he's offering you. Real
quick, let me semantically adjust part of the phrase that Vulcan said earlier. From most of his audience isn't able to most of his audience isn't willing to. I think we all walking around with the internet in our pockets. If we wanted to do a little bit of research, we could. Just most people are not willing to dig that deep. And we could. That's a subject for another pod because I have an opinion on why we don't want to do that.
But it's an art to researching too. That's what the show is. It's an art to knowing what's wrong, what's right, and sometimes you
100%. But I think if you're willing to dig, you can learn that art. Like I don't think any of us are classically trained researchers. all of us just decided one day we wanted to know more about something, and we had the tools to do so. We have access to books, we have access to libraries, we have access to other people. It's we do the research and we put together we form our own opinions, which is, again, to reiterate what we're doing. We're not saying he's right or wrong. We're saying do your own research as opposed to just rocking with him because he's pro-black, which is a real problem in our country. If it's black, we with it, which is not always beneficial to the community.
Yeah, it's no different than
as a whole.
You got a homegirl, we'll say your sister, and the guy's being really nice to your sister, and you let your sister know, like, hey, look, he likes you. You're not hating. Okay. It's just like, look, all the nice stuff you're seeing from this guy, it's not just because he's some kind of amazing Samaritan. He likes you. And so I want you to know when you're addressing this guy and you're factoring in his characteristics, don't be beguiled by it. Know that this is a guy who's pursuing you, and so he's going to do those things that you need to do to pursue you. It may not be a reflection of his real character.
Yes, I agree with that.
So I'm saying Dr. Umar is a religious figure, and you should view him as a religious figure. He's not Marcus Lamont Hill. He's not Dr. Claude Anderson. These guys are guys who are intellectuals, scholars who have a perspective that can be critiqued. John Henry Clark, these guys have perspective that can be critiqued. They're right, they're wrong on some things.
Do you think he would classify himself as such?
I think that we're going to see here on this show, he definitely pedestalizes himself in that way to be a prophet, to be a Messiah. And
but that's still really vague. That's still him operating ambiguity. I'm asking, do you think if somebody put the question to him, hey, do you see yourself as a religious leader? Do you think he would agree, or do you think he would dance on that?
I think that it depends on how intelligent the person asking him the question was. If he thought he could finagle his way, I think he would probably say no.
So you think he would dance? Because I'm just talking about the question.
I think if we gave him a description of a messianic figure, and we gave him a description of just an everyday run-of-the-mill intellectual, and we had him, we just kind of mixed it all together where he didn't know the difference.
Compare and contrast. You think he would pick the messianic figure?
We had him do multiple choice questions. His results would say messianic.
You think he would identify with messianic?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he would unknowingly, knowingly or not unknowingly, consider himself messianic. So, but let's keep the video going. Let's y'all have another point.
Right. Well, real quickly before we start back in the video, the link you sent me, the Facebook link, is that saying I sent it to some of my guys that said the feed is not coming up. Is that the right link? I just want to make sure. When you sent,
I thought it was.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
I mean, maybe
he was wrong. Hey, ask it. Hey, Marcus is contributing heavily, bro. He's making some good points. See if you want to get on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You want to once we finish?
If he wants to hop on, he told me good.
Oh yeah, I'm just putting that out there.
You gotta spit a verse though. No, you gotta spit a verse though. But go ahead.
For the show. All right. Y'all ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Hold on.
Native American.
Man, this dude.
Let me read the comments. Read the comments real quick. Just make sure we have the comments. So we got Marcus says, but there is no competition, bro. I said that earlier, and he is false in his competition. I don't think he cares. I think he's saying I don't think he cares as far as like how he's leading the people, and so are all of your brothers. What I was saying is I believe in you, brothers, more than I believe in Dr. Umar. I love you, brother. So that's what Marcus was saying.
So, hey, Marcus, you think it's a money grab? You think he don't care where he's leading us? He's just trying to get money. Like, what would be his motivation if he's not? And I don't care either way. I'm just asking what you think.
Let's play the video and he'll respond when he.
Yeah. Let him. Yeah, he can respond to the comments.
We'll try to get Marcus on at the end of the video. Let's run through this. You ready?
All right. Yeah.
All right, peace.
African people in America who say I'm not from Africa. I was already here. I'm a Cherokee. I'm a Choctaw. I'm a Seminole. We completely reject that foolishness. Even though you might have a Native American ancestor or two, I have some Native American ancestors. But guess what? If you have 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and 16 great-great-grandparents and 32 great-great-great-grandparents and 64 great-great-great-great-grandparents and 108 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, how many of them was Native American? You're telling me all 108 of your 5 times great-grandparents were Native Americans? That's an absolute lie.
And we just had somebody, a guest on the last couple pods that believe the same thing, right? That believe him and his ancestors didn't originate in Africa. I forgot his name. It was YDG, right?
YDG.
Okay.
Yeah, he was saying the same thing.
Okay.
Shout out to
Go
YDG.
ahead.
But most of your family tree is black. If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Nigeria? If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Kenya? If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Togo, in Benin? The Native Americans don't look like you. You look like African because you are an African. But all throughout our history, we have movements that have come up that sought to give black people a false identity because we hate who we are. So for us, we African. We not accepting nothing else. We want, and we will reject everything else. And that also goes for our mixed race brothers.
Let me speak to that.
Accept them. You got a white mother, black father. You got a black
Are you about
mother,
to about to comment on the fact that he said they seek to give us a false identity because we hate ourselves? Because that doesn't jive.
I wasn't going to speak to that point, but that's a really good point to speak to. I was going to speak on we don't identify with anything else. Why does a black person have to reject their ancestry, their other DNA, because they're black? That commits what's called the composition fallacy, which is saying what's true of the part is true of the whole. So just because I am in part black, all of us on here are probably, pretty much mostly black, but the people that, like my kids, the other people that are not as black genetically as we are, even though their phenotype, what they show physically would be similar to a black person, why should they have to reject other parts of their ethnicity because they happen to be black?
Do you think he's saying rejected, or you think he's saying?
Well, he said that. I think when I remember him say, he says you're nothing. I think he said something like, "You're nothing else. You are black." And I'm saying no.
Oh, I didn't hear him say that. I didn't hear him say it.
Yeah, he did. He said
description, fallacy of composition, description, inferring that something is true of the whole from the fact that it's true of some parts of the whole. That is the opposite of the fallacy of division. So again, just because A is a part of B, A has property X, therefore B has property X. Just because I'm partly black doesn't mean I'm whole black.
Example 1, each brick in that building weighs less than a pound, therefore the building weighs less than a pound. Example 2, hydrogen is not wet, oxygen is not wet, therefore water, H2O, is not wet, the combination of the two.
Yeah, and so I'm saying, so his whole thing is saying that because you're partly black,
all of you is black.
All of it, you're just black. We reject that. I mean, I just identify as black personally, but there are people who identify as more than just black, and that's okay. And what he's saying is a very disparaging comment to those people's ancestry, and we need to identify that and see him as somebody who needs to be watched, because to push his Pan-African agenda, he's willing to disparage other people's ancestry.
Hey, do me a favor if you don't mind. I know we working on time. Can you rewind to where he started talking about the discrepancies between the Native Americans? Because I don't think he's saying in this particular, I don't know I'm not saying what he believes. I'm saying in this particular interview.
Just play it. Let's just play it.
Just play it. I think he's saying Pan-Africanism rejects the idea that people with Native American ancestry don't come from Africa.
All right, here we go.
Not rejects the Native American part of it.
Because it was fixed by God, and you can never change your racial group membership. All of countries they had no affiliation with every day. But what is the one thing you belong to that you can never change? It's your racial group membership. And who chose your racial group membership? Almighty God. So for us, being African is the most spiritual and it is the most sacred identity you can have, because it was fixed by God and you can never change it. So that's number one, African identity. To that point, we take issue with the current so-called Native American movement against African people in America who say, I'm not from Africa. I was already here. I'm a Cherokee. I'm a Choctaw. I'm a Seminole. This, we completely reject that foolishness. Even though you might have a Native American ancestor or two, I have some Native American ancestors. But guess what? If you have 4 grandparents and 8 great-grandparents and 16 great-great-grandparents and 32 great-great-great-grandparents and 64 great-great-great-great-grandparents and 108 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, how many of them was Native American? You're telling me all 108 of your 5 times great-grandparents were Native Americans? That's an absolute lie. You might got some red in your family tree, but most of your family tree is black. If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Nigeria? If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Kenya? If you so Native, why do you look like the same people in Togo, in Benin? The Native Americans don't look like you. You look like African because you are an African. But all throughout our history, we have movements that have come up that sought to give black people a false identity because we hate who we are. So for us, we African. We not accepting nothing else. We want, and we will reject everything else. And that also goes for our mixed race brothers and sisters. We accept them. You got a white mother, black father. You got a black mother, white father, but you identify with the race full time, not just on the weekend or at the Dr. Umar lecture, but full time black. We accept you because some of my greatest heroes was mixed race. There's even an argument historically that the great Nat Turner could have been mixed race. So we don't reject people for how they come into the world because you have no control over that. But if you're going to tell me at the same time that I'm not black, I'm mixed race, I'm biracial, I'm quadracial, I'm going to reject you because what you're looking for is a special privilege for the white blood you got in your body. You ain't get no special privileges here. All African people are
conjecture.
No matter how light you are, no matter how dark you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter how uneducated you are. If there's any privilege that's going to be given in this movement, it's going to be based on your works to liberate African people, not because of your skin color or your ancestry. So identity. Number 2, self-determination. Everything we do as African people must be done by ourselves. Right there. We don't allow non-blacks in our organizations. We don't allow.
And I'm not gonna. I don't want to speak too much of this point because I want to get through the video. But I know we're going to cover like 30 minutes of the video today. It was the plan. How far are we into the video?
Like 20-something
12 minutes.
12?
Yeah, 13 minutes.
So, anyways, so the whole thing is I want to cover some of what he's saying. I'm going to be short. It's the same because I definitely want to get more through the video. But again, what he's talking about here is. He's telling us already at the beginning why somebody would say, I'm not black, I'm mixed race. That's conjecture. That's a classic thing that cults do to keep people from exploring ideas outside of the cult's cultivation.
They demonize the idea, the concept of it.
They demonize the idea. Absolutely. You said it. I was looking for the word. I couldn't find it. You found it. You know, they're demonizing any type of. So this guy, I want to say this. This guy is working as a religious figure. We need to see him that way. He's demonizing anything outside of his particular philosophy of Pan-Africanism. Because just because somebody says they're biracial, mind you, this person has a. They're talking about this with the Kanye's kid situation. They have a white mom. Why wouldn't a kid want to acknowledge their mom? Think about how us on the panel feel about our mom. Audience, think about how you feel about your mom. Why would I want, or your dad, whoever it is, if you were biracial, which I'm not biracial, none of us on the panel are, but if you were biracial, you may have a good reason to want to acknowledge that part of your ancestry.
Are you saying that he's saying reject it? Playing devil's advocate, it sounds like he went through a whole spiel of saying like if you are mixed race.
No, you're right about that part. He said if somebody says I'm not black, I'm biracial.
Yeah, mixed race.
Oh, okay, I'm tracking. No, I'm tracking.
No, Enos was gonna say something. Enos, what you said?
No, I'm just trying to tell Pressure to what he was saying.
So essentially, you're saying
people that
if he doesn't mixed race. What he's saying is if you got a little bit of black in you and you don't want to identify as black, you want to identify as whatever you feel like identifying as, biracial, mixed, whatever the case may be.
We don't
do you, again, playing devil's advocate, do you think he's saying if you're rejecting your black side? Or do you think he's saying if you...
I just want to quote him. He says, we reject you and you're trying to use your whiteness to get white privilege.
You definitely didn't quote him. That's a paraphrase if I ever heard one. Just...
That's pretty close to accurate what he said.
but you said you were going to quote him. That's a paraphrase. That's a paraphrase.
Okay, yeah, that's a paraphrase. But I don't want the audience to think that a paraphrase is a quote. No, you're right. That's a paraphrase, but it's a pretty close paraphrase.
It's an approximation, yeah.
Yeah.
He said something akin to that.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. But we can continue unless y'all have any point you want to make.
No, that was it. I would just say he's saying the same thing the white supremacists were saying back in the 1800s. I was just going. That's why I said earlier the one drop rule, what those DNA analysts came up with in the late 1800s. So he's saying the same rhetoric they were saying back in those days.
Right, he's saying basically, if you got a little bit of black in you, you black.
Right. Yeah. Basically.
And you shouldn't identify as nothing else but.
Yeah.
And so if you do, we reject you.
I'm gonna read the comments here, and audience, please feel free to leave a comment, ask any kind of questions you may have, any observations. We welcome it all. This is about not about anybody having all the answers or all the truths. It's about just getting all the good ideas on the table and let's exploring them all.
Yeah, we just having an intellectual discourse here.
You know, there's a quote that says, "Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers." So hopefully, in all this dialogue, it just leads to better questions for all of us. So so Marcus put on here 23andMe ancestry. Oh my God, I can't. Yo, this man is telling our race, selling, not telling. You know, I'm a sales guy. That's a really important concept right there. Selling, not telling.
Yep.
Just because it is a part of notice how every time you talk to an Israelite, the selling point is we are the chosen people. Some of Hebrew Israelites. To that point, that is the age exact message of the Hebrew Israelites. And they said, no, he can't say that for me. And he certainly can't deliver the message to everyone mixed race. I don't condone that either, but I get it.
Strong words. Man, he's sure he don't want to get on the stream, brother. Yeah, kicking knowledge.
He ain't said it. He ain't said it yet, so we'll keep moving.
Come on, Marcus.
Non-blacks to give us money. As you know, I'm working on the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. No non-black money. Why? Because we have to do it ourselves. Why? Because if I build that school and white people give me the money to build that
Vulcan,
school,
you made a good point about this yesterday. I sorry to pause it again, but you made a good point about this yesterday. This man ain't got off the screen.
Oh, you heard me?
You remember his point, Darius?
No.
Huh?
No, I don't remember. He made a few points.
Okay, so basically, and this was just yesterday in the conversation he and I were having about this interview. He's essentially saying that his school is all black.
Hold on, let's wait there. Let's wait.
Yeah. I'm gonna let him make his point.
Yeah, well, write that down so you remember to bring that back up.
I ain't gonna forget it. Bro, we had an hour and a half. I thought we was gonna be able to, because we were breaking up the video in segments. I thought we was gonna be able to get in and get out. I don't know why I believe that about it. I don't know why I believe that. Hey, chill. Hey, calm down. Hey, don't do me like that.
So 20 minutes or so. 20 minutes or so. Right, here we go.
Hey,
Vulcan.
Vulcan.
White people built half of our HBC. And whenever you find a black,
can you rewind it, Darius? Yeah. Can you rewind it real quick to where he's talking about the school? Hey, Vulcan, you made a good point about this yesterday. About him saying that no white money or no white funds is involved in his school.
Yeah,
you remember what you said about that yesterday? You want to expound upon it?
Yeah, for sure. It's been he's expressed this numerous times on his different platforms and stuff like that. He's been pretty open about this. And again, I'm not in any way wanting to cast any aspersions on his intent and his commitment to his movement. But he has expressed that he has used white companies to get work done in the school. Reference
the Breakfast Club interview.
Absolutely right. So my whole thing is when he says, sorry, go ahead. He knows.
It was the interview with the three brothers that was on the couch. I can't remember that.
He's had multiple interviews. That's what Vulcan said. He's said this. He's made this statement, or he's pointed this out in multiple interviews. I think the most popular one or the most accessible one would be the Breakfast Club interview. For sure. Yeah, we're gonna get back into it. Yeah.
Forced to operate in the same neighborhoods. And that's another reason why we see such a drop.
When did you
my parents divorced when I was in the third or fourth for Philly. As you know, your elementary school is assigned based on your address. And so the George G. Meade Elementary School that I attended at 18th and Oxford was African people must be done by ourselves. We don't allow termination. Everything we do as African people, no matter how uneducated you are. If there's any privilege that's going to be given in this movement, it's going to be based on your works to liberate African people, not because of your skin color or your ancestry. So identity. Number 2, self-determination. Everything we do as African people must be done by ourselves. We don't allow non-Blacks in our organizations. We don't allow non-Blacks to give us money. As you know, I'm working on the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy. No non-Black money. Why? Because we have to do it ourselves. Why? Because if I build that school and white people gave me the money to build that school, how can we celebrate that as a Black institution? Okay, white people built half of our HBCUs. White people built the Urban League. White people built the NAACP. If we really want to be an independent people, if we're really tired of slavery, why are you still looking for your oppressor to finance your liberation?
Hey, pause it real quick. I'm sorry.
If they was interested in financing your liberation, you'd be free already. So
I'm sorry. He makes this point, which is almost in direct contradiction to the point he made earlier about mixed race and whether you have different ancestry. He's essentially saying if there's any white money in it, then the whole thing is white.
Yeah.
Like he said there's no white money involved in the building of this school, because if I build this school and white people gave me the money, now if he's saying white people funded it completely, I understand his point, but that's not what he said. He said if there's any white money involved in this, that's why we don't accept any white money, any contributions from white people in the building of this school. Then how can we call it a Black institution? I mean, if it's a little bit of white money, if it costs 15 million to build and white people give 5 million, does that now make it a white institution? Can it no longer be a Black institution because there's other elements involved? That's a direct contradiction to the point he just made when he was talking about Pan-Africanism.
Yeah.
Good point.
So he's really like using, like, the statements that he makes are designed, they're incendiary, they're designed, they're built around like sensationalism. He's saying like really like hot phrases to bring you in, as opposed to being intentional about his words and phrasing and saying, I'm really utilizing facts. Like let's keep a linear pattern of thought here.
We got Marcus said he'll come in. I'm gonna send him the link to come in.
Yeah.
Alrighty. All right, y'all ready to get back into it?
Yes, sir.
You're
self-determination in all things. That includes building family. And that's why we reject interracial relationship. No snow bunny hopping at all. Black family is Black man and Black woman, and that's the only family that we can accept, because marriage is a financial arrangement. Women live longer than men on average. I marry a snow bunny, I die, she gets my bag. Is she going to give any of that money back to the community? Go and ask Kobe Bryant's widow. She ain't thinking about using none of that Black man's money to help the Black community. Go ask Marvelyn Hagler's widow. She ain't thinking about using none of that man's money to help the Black community. A white
Hey, but if you got a white mother, we accept you.
And that's why I take issue with Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco. I love them as Black men. They my brothers, but I take issue because you have Black boys looking up to you and you're telling them it's okay to publicly declare that you don't date nothing but white women. That's not acceptable, Shannon Sharp. Now, Ocho Cinco hasn't said that, but he does tend to bunny hop. We need brothers to stop bunny hopping because it's not beneficial. Only 1 out of every 4 Black women gets married in this country. Every time a Black man goes out the race to find his partner, you're abandoning another Black woman who has a God-given right to have a husband and to build a family. So if we really care about our people, there's no way under God you can tolerate interracial marriage. It's not about hating white women. It's not about hating white men. It's about loving ourselves. Charity starts at home.
God-given right.
Charity starts at home. Black family needs to be built by Black people. So that's number 2, self-determination. Number 3, as Africa goes, so goes our people. This is important.
That's the end of point number 2. So I want to stop there. Again, he said God-given right. Now, see, again, this is when he smuggles in the religious aspect of it. That's what this what goes to the Messiah complex, because he's not a pastor. He's not a imam. He's not a religious figure as far as how we look at, rabbi. So nothing on his title says that he's a religious figure. So we're taking him like we would take a teacher if we're a kid, if we're a professor. This is something that's been intellectually rigorous studies been done to and presented to us. It's based off some good information, but it's open to question. So what he's but he's saying things that a professor wouldn't say. He's saying things that another academic wouldn't say. He's saying things that make it to where it's something written on tablets of stone, passed down from the heavens.
So you're saying that essentially he's pushing a belief more than any sort of substantiated argument, which is what any religious leader would do.
Well, I would say this: he's doing both, and I just want people to recognize both. He does push arguments, right?
Right. You're saying judge him on the way we would judge
a pastor, or an imam, or
judge him on that rubric as a. I'm tracking.
Because when you looking at a religion, if you're doing religious studies, you're going to go study that religion. You're going to go into the religion, study the religion. You're going to look up where it came from. Where did it start? How did it get here? How was it passed down? Oral traditions, all that kind of stuff. You're going to look at.
That's going to be hard to do. That's going to be hard to do, Umar. I'm sorry if you don't mind if I
No, for sure. You're absolutely right, and that's my whole point.
Yeah, that's going to be real difficult for the audience to pay attention.
He's producing an inferior product.
Yeah, because you could do that with the pastor, the Christian pastor. You could bring the Bible, the manual, and see where
you could do that with the Muslim. You could do it with the Muslim preacher.
You could do that with somebody.
You could do it with the rabbi.
There's no religious documents for Pan-Africanism.
No. That's what.
Does Pan-Africanism set itself up as a religion though?
And he's
not.
What is he? Ifa?
I think I heard him say he was Ifa before.
Yeah. So if he's Ifa again, try to research about Ifa. It's not a lot of information you're gonna find on that.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of information. You can't vet it. You really can't vet it.
It's hard.
Is it because it's new, or do you think it's purposely operating in ambiguity so you can't pin it down?
It's not new. It's an ancient.
They didn't do a good job of keeping it alive.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm just playing devil's advocate. We ask questions on here.
Is Marcus on, or what you would say, Derek?
Oh no, I didn't hear it. I didn't see him come in.
So
it's easy to hold.
I sent the link to his inbox. So I don't know if he caught that or not, but
I can see it when he comes in. Well, yeah,
it's easier to hold than accountable if you have
the manual,
a document that backs it up.
For sure, it's like constitutions versus non-written constitutions. The countries that rule the world are the written constitution countries.
Yeah, I want to say something. I don't know why it could be like what Vulcan said earlier. Maybe they didn't document it, the religion, or it's a lot of ways to look at this. Some say it was all the information was destroyed, or they didn't do a good job documenting their religious beliefs. So that's a whole another show.
Yeah, for sure. That's another show for sure.
Yeah. Let's but like I said, when you don't have that, it makes it hard to hold you accountable. You don't actually have a manual to go off on to go down.
Which we think he's counting on, right?
Yeah, because
he's counting on the fact that you don't have any reference documents to refute or challenge any of his arguments. It's just
not
you should believe me because I'm
not even just challenge arguments. If Creflo Dollar is making great arguments based out of his book of faith, but he's sleeping with underage people, then he's going to be judged for that because we know his moral code that he's supposed to be held to. If an Islamic person, a Buddhist person, or a Hindu person is doing certain things, we know what documents to go to hold them accountable to their morality, their ethics, their spiritual practices. When you look at Ifa, you don't see much about it. How do I know when Dr. Umar is abandoning his Ifa for a night, for a day?
Yeah.
How do I know if he's internally consistent with his worldview as a whole? I have no idea.
Mm-hmm. All right, you ready to get back into it?
Yeah, we get back into it.
What's the timestamp right now?
15.
Dang. I ain't gonna say that.
Freshly, you can talk. Freshly, you can talk, man.
Nah, don't do me like that. Because if we go back and tally it up, you stopped it way more than me. Chill.
All right, 15 minutes. 15 more minutes, y'all.
Because in America, what do you hear Negroes say? Why are we worrying about Africa for? We got our problems right here in America. Well, guess what? You don't stop fighting in America. You fight where you are, but you also keep a vision to what the greater goal is. All people's respect that is accorded to them in this world is a reflection of the respect given to the international homeland. I've been everywhere in the world except Australia, where I'll be next spring. Wherever I go in the world, Chinese are respected. If I'm in Jamaica, they're respected. If I'm in Cuba, they're respected. If I'm in London, they're respected. If I'm in Austria, they're respected. If I'm in South Africa, they're respected. Nowhere I go are Chinese people treated like an afterthought. Nowhere I go are European Jews treated like an afterthought. Nowhere I go, Anglo-Saxons are treated like an afterthought. But everywhere I go, even in an all-black country like Suriname, South America, or Turks and Caicos, the Caribbean island, or South Africa, or Togo, Benin, Gambia, Malawi, everywhere I've been over the continent, Black people are treated like an afterthought, even when we are in the numerical majority. Why? Because Africa is not strong. She's the richest continent. She's the most minerally rich continent, but she doesn't control her wealth. The white man does it. Colonialism ended. Neo-colonialism.
Let's pause this.
So when people look at us, they don't see no American.
Marcus, just so you know, it's in your inbox, just so you know.
Man, this dude Vulcan, stay pausing the video, dog.
Pause. But yeah, so let me address what he just saying right here, because again, you said it already. It's conjecture. It's complete conjecture. The reality of the matter is this: when it comes to the point that he's making right here, actually, you know what? Should I let him?
You should let him run out some more rope. He does a good job.
Are you gonna remember? You gotta write it now.
Yeah, go ahead. I want to tackle that, but
we ain't got the time.
It's up to y'all. All right, let's go.
He basically is saying stuff in a way that is it's pure conjecture, because for that to be true or for that to be a factual statement, he would have to interact with every African person everywhere he's ever been.
Let me just say this piece.
If it's not true for one black person, then it's not. Then his whole argument falls apart.
Yeah,
he goes, everywhere I go, people were treated like this as an afterthought. I'm like, if there's even a minority that doesn't apply to, it deserves, the argument deserves to acknowledge that. He's using very definitive language.
And it's all conjecture. Is he gonna produce some kind of study that substantiates this? Because I would say this. Now, African Americans, yes, maybe perhaps they're an afterthought, but Nigerians here in the Western world are very respected. They have the highest per capita income in the Western world, so they're very highly respected in the capitalist society we live in. The Nigerians are. So that but even that part aside, it's conjecture to say that just you only go as far as Africa goes. So I'm being judged. P. Diddy, Robert Johnson, Oprah's being judged by how Africa's doing. I've never heard that before. Again, I'm not saying it's not true. I need to see some proof to that, because he's just stating it as a mantra.
Give me your sources.
Yeah, as a matter of where's our gift?
What's your source?
Where's our gift?
I need proof.
Yeah. So the thing is that he needs to prove that, because I'm not saying he's not right about that. I need to see some proof to that. I've never looked at it that way.
We just saying do your Googles, man. Do your Googles. Do your own Googles. You got the same internet in your pocket, man. Do your research. And if you still want to rock with Umar, I'm not against you, or I don't think we're saying you're wrong. We're saying don't just take him at his word because he's pro-black.
And don't take him at his word because he's smart. He is a smart man. He's a brilliant mind.
Yeah, so are a lot of dictators.
Yeah,
so are a lot of cult leaders. So are a lot of serial killers.
Absolutely.
Intellect doesn't make you right.
So, what's the pros and cons of giving your empirical experiences? Your experiences. That's what he experienced, right? What they call anecdotal.
Yeah. So
yeah, but it's still a very limited perspective. It's still only his perspective. When he's addressing the masses, you have to be more objective in that. You have to take into consideration other perspectives and experiences may or may not match up with yours. But right now, he is essentially giving his personal experience, which in the grand scheme of things, no matter how many places he's been, is still small. It's still very small perspective on the grand scale. He's presenting that as what I experienced is what it is.
Yeah, like you want to pull up that anecdotal fallacy right there. But
okay, no fallacy. I didn't hear you.
This is another fallacious argumentation. Just because what you've experienced is you travel the world, and again, I can get how intuitively when he says I've traveled the world and seen this, like wow, you traveled the world. That's pretty amazing, and he's seen this thing. That's a very limited vantage point by somebody who already has a biased agenda.
Let me frame it like this in another way, real quick. That's like a white person, or not a white person, excuse me. That's like a black person who says racism doesn't exist because they never personally experienced it.
Yeah.
White people never treated me like that, so I don't think racism exists.
The world and never experienced racism.
Yeah. What does that have to do with? That's your own personal experience. That's a very small.
His point.
Yeah, your perspective bubble is still small, no matter how widely traveled it is. It's still a personal experience.
Yeah, I'm not even pull it up right now. Let's just move on. Got anything else?
No, let's keep it going.
All right, let's keep going. I'll pull it up later.
This is what Negroes get wrong. They don't see no American when you walk down the street. They see an African. They know exactly who you are. And the level of respect that they give you is a direct reflection of the level of respect that is given to all African people. There's no white people don't put black people in groups. No race divides any race up into groups. The respect you have for Chinese people, you have for every Chinese. The respect you have for Jewish people, you have for every Jewish person. And the disrespectful attitude you have for the African continent is automatically affixed to every African on the planet. Nobody can escape it. Not Jay-Z, not Oprah Winfrey, not LeBron James, not Puffy, not Kanye, not Diddy. Nobody.
Hey, we all know an African who don't consider
dishonor that is given to
American black people Africans
because they're
facts.
There are races that exist. There are people that do separate. I challenge his statements, like what he says. I hold him accountable for what he says. I ain't saying I understand maybe his intent or what he's trying to say, but if you're trying to say that you consider yourself an effective communicator or a great communicator, you need to say what you mean. When you say no race makes us, our own race does that. We do it to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Tragic.
Corporate commodities who are necessary for the European capitalistic model to exist and thrive. Once they're no longer necessary, they end up like Bill Cosby or R. Kelly. And the last point for Pan-Africanism, and there's many, but the last one, your God better look like you. Marcus Garvey started a doll factory in New York in the 1920s. This is before the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court decision. This is before Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston took the racist segregation in school districts to federal court, getting school desegregation outlawed in America. Brown versus Board, May 17th, 1954. 30 years before that, Marcus Garvey had a black doll factory because he said our children constantly looking at Europeans was breeding inferiority. Well, what happens 30 years later? In court, Dr. Kenneth Clark, one of my psychological forefathers, he shows in court that segregated education was harmful to the psychology of black children using the doll experiment. He gave black children white dolls and black dolls. Which one is ugly? Which one is more likely to be more successful? Who do you want to be? Garvey knew that 35 years before Kenneth Clark, and he was not a PhD in psychology. But getting to my point, God must look like you. Because if God doesn't look like you, you're automatically indoctrinating your children into inferiority. If I go to church and I'm told God is white, if God is white, if the Savior is white, if the one and only Son of God is a Caucasian, and you teach a black child this, if God is white and you are the opposite of white, you automatically, by contraindication, is the devil. But not only that, if God is white, then all white people must be godly. And so divinity gets extended to the president, to the judge in court. It gets extended to the police. It gets extended to the business owner, because if God is white, maybe God put all white people in charge. So that white Jesus image that was created in 1482 by Leonardo da Vinci, 10 years before Columbus set sail to the New World, has been the worst weapon used against black people, and it still is. I guarantee you I could go throughout Chicago and find white Jesus still hanging in black people's homes.
Yo, that's a crazy statement to make.
People's homes. When I'm back home in Philadelphia, white Jesus in the Caribbean.
Finish his point.
Because he used maybe, like, as if most black people are not intellect, and you don't even have to be a staggering intellectual to be able to say I believe in Christianity, even though I don't believe in white God. Like he's saying, like, they told us God is white, and if you believe in Christianity at all, you have to believe that God is white. Like, no.
Let me